So about 40 minutes ago, one of the worst patches, if not the worst patch, has just dropped, supposedly. But I actually want to go through the reactions on Twitter from big streamers. As you can see, Awkward Chasm, there's more up front. And basically every single one is critical of this patch before I actually get into it, because I think this sets the stage quite well for what we're going to be into. If you don't know, or be living under a rock, the tank patch is just a tank patch. Like, it's a massive buff across the board, across all 12 tanks, I believe. And again, you can see Awkward here saying that the solution isn't to just make tanks overpowered, because that makes the rest of the roles unfun, and I would genuinely agree with that. I think that's a fairly good take. Chasm here, ball player, ball one trick, one of the best balls in EU, if not the best ball player, talking about how ball, being sarcastic in terms of like how the buffs are too little, he's still underpowered, he still needs more buffs. Lastly, you can see SK saying oh no, Metro saying yesterday actually, before the patch released, saying that today, will go down as the worst state Overwatch has ever been in, and I'm ready for my raid against the enemy tank. Twitter celebrity, I love saying Twitter celebrity. Hawk saying this is the worst patch of all time. Landon, pro flexport player for SSG, formerly for Spitfire, complaining about that, how broken Pharah is, and how this patch doesn't really change how good Pharah really is. Confusion, again, another Twitter celebrity, saying that I'm so serious, this might be the worst patch ever. 100 likes, 150 in already 20 minutes. Moneyfolder, another classic Twitter celebrity who's been banned for 4 times actually. This is the 5th time on Twitter, and saying 1 to 2 hours before the funniest patch drops, and yeah, he's sort of validating himself there. Hydron, testing out the Mauga change. The Mauga change is basically decreasing the length or the duration of his cardiac overdrive, but drastically increasing how strong it is. So I'll play it here in 1 second. Yeah, and the point of that being that Mauga's gaining significantly more HP in a shorter period of time because the cardiac overdrive is more powerful now. Neandra, Mercy content creator, TikToker too. Love them. Mauga gets enough, but also gets really good composition buffs. Pharah gets slapped on the wrist, while Cassidy gets his Reinhardt. I've tried to avoid being match specials, but yeah. And I would genuinely agree with that. I think the far enough is a slap on the wrist. I actually do think the Cassidy range lowering is nice. I will talk about that change later, but I think it's a good change. To me too, of course, saying to bring back 6v6, already calling for that. Admittedly, I will say this patch has been kind of making me think about 6v6 seriously, because it kind of shows that the devs don't know how to fix the game or balance it properly. Yeah, SK showing this patch, basically Ramattra got 75 extra armor, and here she is going in turret form and melting, or trying to melt Ramattra, blocking, while nano boosted. And it's basically doing nothing. It's kind of the point there. Crispy, I think a pro player. Guys, the game is being ruined by Zarya full of explosive one-shot projectiles that make no sound. Let's fix it by making hit scan fall off even worse and buffing the shit out of every tank for literally no reason. Yeah, we would generally agree with that. Again, I don't hate the hit scan fall off, but Pharah definitely needs enough. I can see Broga making fun of that SK clip there with a quote tweet. J3, prominent streamer, tank players being sped through and everything right about now. Apply, another funny Twitter celebrity and Twitch streamer. I take 1 day off and Blizzard fucks up the whole game, it's all my fault, I should have known. Havoc, another Twitch streamer, just bring back 6v6. Boga, meme here, a world of tanks, which is quite funny. And Coffee, prominent coach, tier 2 coach for, forgot what team, I think it was, oh yeah, Nightmare Rotation is in his name. Saying no way and being, saying that about the patch. My tweet says this, I hate being reactionary and not wanting to see how things pan out, but man, this patch might be legitimately be voted. Free TikTok material at least, and that's what I will be doing. I will be making a TikTok as soon as I stop recording this. Okay, so I'm midway through editing, and I just remembered this tweet from Alec Dawson. When you read the balance patch notes, don't be too reactionary, because, as Dawson says, with bigger swings like this, we'll be more reactive with any out-of-line gameplay issues. So hopefully, if a hero is extremely broken, it can get fixed quite swiftly, but yeah, that's not an excuse, obviously, right? But just keep that in the back of your mind. It's not the end of the world. Overwatch isn't dead. Don't catastrophize this, okay? It's gonna be okay. The first change is actually to the passives, so for those who don't know, you would get reduced ult charge or ult generation if you shot tanks. Now that's being increased even more by 10%. Don't know why, no one really complained about that, I don't know why that was a feature, but here it is. Knockback resistance reduced from 50 to 40%. I think that's fair. I think everyone knows, especially Lucio players, the knockback was a little bit too much, but I think it was a bit welcome there to not be whipped around all the time as a tank. So I think that's a good change. D.Va, I actually like this change, not the Defense Matrix one. I think that's already a little bit egregious, but I like the Micro Missile change a little bit more, specifically for the fact that since the armor change, it's been harder for D.Va to actually do any damage. She's always been a hero that has sort of lacked teeth, so to say, so I'm a fan of this change. Gives her a little bit more punch to her kits, and yeah, I think she's sort of beta, I'd say now, Doomfist, a change to his overhealth from his passive, overhealth gain per target increased from 35 to 40 HP, and the delay before it actually drains going from 1 to 3 seconds. It's a quality of life change. I don't mind it, but it's not going to do anything. Doom's still going to get rolled over by Mauga, Queen, who we'll get onto very soon, and just overall Brawl Dive or Brawly heroes at the moment. Mauga and Sigma are the two main reasons why you're not seeing Doom right now at all. Ever since he got introduced or got brought back into the meta after his overdrive changes, his pick rate has just fallen through the ground. And when we have seen pro teams like Ents try and play Doomfist on Samoa, it hasn't gone well. So I don't know what this change is going to do. But yeah, we're going for the tip of the iceberg here. Queen changes, overhealth increased from 150 to 175 on the commanding shout, and arguably a bigger change here, the self-healing multiplier from her adrenaline rush going from 2 to 2.5 times. This is quite a big sustain buff, and I'm on the fence about it. I do think she needed a slight sustain increase, because I think when you compare Queen to Sigma May comps, or even Mauga right now, I think she did need that slight little bit of sustain, but alternatively, if you don't want to power creep the game, I think nerfing Mauga, which we'll get onto, would have been the correct way to go about that. But yeah, Queens are going to be a big win of this patch. Whether this is a good or bad change, I'm leaning towards the side of bad, but this is, again, not even the worst thing in this patch. Mauga, I don't even know. Let's start with the good. The good is that allies receive only half of the lifesteal and damage reduction off the card like Overdrive, and this was something I was calling for a few weeks back. If anyone remembers that 2022 Junkerqueen Summer Showdown meta where she was part of my meta and Shout gave teammates 100 HP, it lasted 5 seconds, it was really oppressive. What the devs did to nerf that was reduce the effect of commanding Shout to the allies, and this is the same thing that's happening to the Overdrive, so I'm a big fan of that. It's a good step in the right direction, but I can't give more praise to that, to be honest. Now, the Overrun change, I don't know why we're doing this. Overrun was already strong. It got giga buffed last patch or a few patches ago. No one wanted this. No one was complaining about the weakness or the limitations of Overrun. Nobody was complaining about that. And the real piece of the resistance is the duration, the card deck Overdrive change. Now it's essentially the power is going from something like this to now like this, where it's a much bigger spike, but it lasts a lot shorter. Stuff like Barrage Overdrive, that's still going to be really powerful, even though it's going to be hard for teammates. Because it's been giga buffed, it's still going to be 20% reduction for Pharah and 50% healing on lifesteal there. It's still going to be really oppressive to play against. And for Mauga, you're going to see in the Hydron clip, right? The HP is going to jump up so quickly, and it's going to be annoying to play against Mauga with. The good news is at least it's somewhat outplayable. You can, at least that's a win con you can play against, is to kite away from this peak in pressure and to try and kite back and make sure you minimize the value you get from it. But if anything, this is going to make heroes like Ana and Kiriko even more of a pick right now. And again, people like Sparrow have been calling for this for the longest periods of time, right? We want more cooldowns that have a power curve kind of like this, like smoother power curve that's more fun to play against, rather than this massive spike in value. And that's what we talked about with things like Nade, that's what we talked about with things like Immortality Field with support CDs back in that argument a few, before Season 9, before that big change there. But it's happening with tanks now, and this is going to make Overdrive unfun to play against. It's already unfun to play against. I don't know why they decided to do this. It's going to make Nade even more important. It's going to make Suzu even more important, and yeah, I don't know. This is not fun. Orisa change, I think this is actually fairly welcome. She got giga nerfed last patch, and regardless of the tank patch, I think she did need a slight nudge in the right direction. I think this 4-5 change is welcome, especially with the prevalence of Mauga. I don't know why they changed Overdrive this drastically. I wish they just kept it as the same, maybe reduce this to like 4 seconds. And, by the way, change how Overdrive works. I forgot to mention this, by the way. The reason why Overdrive is so shittily designed is because it's reliant on you tank farming to get HP. It's reliant on you dealing damage to get your sustain. Whereas Fortify is a flat sustain curve. It just gives you sustain when you press the button, right? Whereas Mauga, you need to shoot tanks for it to actually do anything. This encourages that even more. So I don't know why. It just doesn't make sense. They're not fixing the inherent problems with Mauga Overdrive. They're just busting up the numbers and hoping that makes a change. Ramattra is a big winner this patch. I mean, comparably with Mauga, I don't know how that matchup's going to work, but this is a big change for Nemesis form armor, and the breakpoint change as well. It's going to take 4 pummels now to kill a 250 HP target, and as they mentioned, that's something key, so he gets a big damage and sustain increase, which he didn't even need in my opinion. He was already like a solid B tier tank. I think just nerf Sigma slightly, and you see this guy played a lot more. The big problem with Reinhardt is what the other tanks can do over him. Ram's more versatile, Mauga's got insane team utility with his overdrive, Sigma can mark angles from 50 billion years away, and Reinhardt can't do any of those things. So I guess increasing this helps fight against the Mauga overdrive change, I guess, but I'm not seeing a massive sort of seismic shift in terms of this guy's pick rate. Speaking of quality of life changes, I mean, I'm not sure if this is going to be quality of life, but this is kind of a pointless change. I've got no thoughts on it. Yeah, it's not really needed. It doesn't fix why Hog is terrible or feels bad to play against. What the Sigma? I mean, decreasing damage increase from 40 to 80, he didn't need a buff. Second best tank in the game right now, arguably the best tank in the game from a solo queue point of view, because of how versatile he is. Didn't need this at all. Now onto Winston, who gets a nice quality of life change, but this primal change, man, like, it's just so frustrating, you know? And if you look at their reasoning, they don't want Winston to be killable in primal range, you know? But if you look at one of the big reasons why Winston's so killable at the moment, it's because of this guy, you know? Like, it's because of this guy. Now, when you play Winston into comps where there isn't a Mauga on board, you're just making the game more rock, paper, scissors, because now you need to pick Mauga to counter the Winston, and also, if there isn't a Mauga on the board, if you're playing, let's say, on a Kiriko into a Winston backline or against a Winston, how do you counterplay that? Because it's an extra 200 HP you have to chew through, and paired with that nerf on Honor, with the sleep dart as well, which we'll get onto, yeah, I don't know, man, I don't know. Bull gets quite a giga buff, I guess you could call it. I think this is a nice quality of life change, but this, I don't know. I think his adaptive overhealth was already, that sharing shields process was already quite a nice change for him. I don't know why they do this. Again, not a great change. And this change with Zarya, I'm torn on whether it's actually going to do anything, mainly because of Ram and Mauga being giga buffed this patch right now. But I think if this was a vacuum, I'd say this is a bit too much, but who knows how this is going to turn out for the next patch or not. I do like the idea of giving Zarya more sustain. She basically gets 50 more HP now with bubbles, and I 1 second more window of like not taking damage. But yeah, I don't think they're going to do much in comparison to the rest of the tank changes this patch. Ashe, Bob gets tank or passive ability, not much to say about that. Cassidy, I think, gets a nice change. I think some content creators were saying that this was a bad change because of, you know, the prevalence of Pharah, which I agree with, by the way. But I think when you compare Cassidy to the rest of his competition, mainly being Sojourn, Ashe at the moment as well, I think this differentiates him enough, gives Ashe that more long range, and Sojourn as well, that more long range kind of threat, gives this guy more close core combat, that kind of niche that you want to fulfill for Cassidy, gets him into that range where you can get more value out of that nade. I'm happy with that, or flashbang now it is, but I'm fairly happy with this change. It's just other changes aren't that good, which makes this change look bad. Okay, so I'm redoing this Pharah one because I think I have more to say on it than I did in my initial reaction to it. Obviously, seemingly, this is a nerf on the surface because the explosion damage has been reduced by 30, so now it does 30 damage on direct hits, just from the impact itself. However, it's given more knockback and more mobility to Pharah, And the thing that makes Pharah so good right now is the mobility. And again, the way I explain Pharah in terms of how good she is she's got the spam of Junkrat, the mobility of an Echo, and the dueling capability of a Tracer. It's those last two things that need to be nerfed. And this actually helps those two things. It gives her more mobility. So I don't... Yeah, I combined with this cast change as well above that keeps Pharah at bay, yeah, this is arguably not enough at all. Arguably a buff in some eyes. The thing you need to do with Pharah is give her sound cues. Again, Naga, one of the pro Pharah people, one of the people that wanted Pharah to actually stay in meta and not get giga nerfed. What he wanted was sound cues. Again, Landon wanted sound cues. Pretty much every pro player is wanting sound cues on Pharah because that makes her dueling capability way less lethal. It makes it less silence, makes it easier to deal with. So that needs to be a change, right? Just give Pharah sound cues with the mobility. If that still doesn't work, then you can start nerfing it a bit more. But yeah, there needs to be more counterplay potential to dueling a Pharah who's directly on top of you and got there in about 2 milliseconds because of her new mobility. Sleep dot change, I mean, it's whatever. I'm just thinking about that Mauga Ana exchange now, because if you nade that Mauga when he's using his overdrive, he's not gonna get any of that lifesteal. Nor are his teammates in that overdrive too. So that's what really I'm thinking about at the moment right now. And I'm just thinking how necessary it is for you to play Kiriko with that Mauga because of that change. So yeah, I mean, sure, it's a nice change to make tanks feel less tanky, but again, in the context of this patch, not sure about this change. Illari gets a fairly menial UI change, and Zen gets an alt cost decrease. Who cares, really, to be honest. I think Ana Zen, I think these two are going to be quite useful in countering Mauga, but in the context of the Mauga Lucio Kiriko meta with Pharah as well, I don't see these two, or double flex backline, being the solution to that right now in the current meta, especially on certain maps. So again, we'll wait, we'll see how things pan out this patch. My inclination is that it's going to be pretty bad. I don't want to be reactionary. I want to give this patch time to settle and cook in and see. That's when we can start making more opinions and more nuanced can be brought into the discussion here. But yeah, that's my thoughts on this patch. That's the content creators' thoughts on this patch, as you saw at the beginning. And let me know your thoughts down below. We'll be reading your comments. And yeah, until next time.